So for those of you who have been following my channel for a while, it should come as no surprise whatsoever to you that I absolutely love the SEGA Genesis. It was the very first video game console that I ever owned, and a substantial amount of the playtime during my childhood was spent with this lovely machine. There is a ton of things I would love to say about my history with the console itself, but I think I'm going to save that for a future story time on my channel. Rather, today, I simply want to discuss what I think is my personal favorite game for the Genesis, and seeing as how today, February 16th, 2025, marks the 30th anniversary of the game's North American release, what better day would there be to talk about that game, which is Ristar. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got a lot of other games fighting for that top spot in my heart. Obviously, the Sonic, Streets of Rage, and Shinobi franchises all get a ton of love and replay sessions out of me. And of course, there are the few other fan favorites out there that I also agree on, like Thunder Force 4 and Gunstar Heroes. But since starting my channel, I've been putting a ton of thought into what might actually take the crown as my absolute favorite Genesis game, so that I might be able to feature it in a video, and the more and more I ran every game that I've played before on this console through this mental gauntlet, Sega's plucky little star guy from 1995 just kept coming out on top. I think Ristar's somewhat obscure status among the various mascot characters that Sega has introduced over the years also makes him even more deserving of a bit of praise. Oh, and by the way, before I get into this, I understand that there's always been a bit of a confusion regarding how Ristar's name is pronounced. To my understanding, the majority, I myself included in this, tend to refer to him as Ristar versus the alternative Ristar and Ristar, so I'm going to stick with the consensus for the rest of the video. Alternatively, I am among the minority who say GIF instead of GIF, so please feel free to rip me apart in the comments regarding that one. Anyways, so for those of you who might be unfamiliar with Ristar, the game takes place in a distant galaxy where the tyrannical space pirate Kaiser Greedy launches an invasion upon the 6 planets of the Valdi solar system. Upon making landfall, Greedy's minions then enslave the populace of each planet and brainwash their leaders into serving Greedy's every whim. Even Ristar's own father, a legendary hero throughout their solar system, succumbs to Greedy's control. The events of the game are set in motion when the desperate pleas from the planet Flora's inhabitants awaken Ristar, and the young hero launches into action to help defeat Kaiser Greedy and his forces. Gameplay-wise, here we find a 2D platformer that features our protagonist Ristar, a living shooting star that possesses a very unique ability in the form of his stretchy arms. These arms allow Ristar to reach out and grab nearly everything around him and interact with it in some way. There is of course his ability to defeat enemies by using this grab feature, where he then reels himself towards his foe to deliver a strong headbutt attack. However, where the game really makes use of this grabbing ability is in manipulating the various environments that you will find yourself in throughout the game. Your arms end up becoming powerful transversal tools that not only allow you to climb across certain hazards, but also scale vertical walls and jungle gym up and down different scenery items. You can also use your arms to activate certain items and grab objects to move them elsewhere across each level. One of the most important uses of these arms involves manipulating the various star handles that are scattered throughout each level. By grabbing onto these devices, Ristar is then able to accelerate himself around and around the star handle until he reaches a critical speed, and then upon release, blast his way like a shooting star across the playfield. During this time, Ristar can fly around and ricochet off obstacles with blazing speed, and his shimmering star effect grants him temporary invulnerability, as well as a one-touch and you're done attack against most common enemies. These star handles become invaluable for navigating certain areas of the game quickly and safely. All of this combined highlights what is one of the really amazing things about this game, how Ristar is able to get so much dynamic and variable gameplay out of such a simple moveset. This is what makes for truly great game design in my opinion, by taking a very basic ability and expanding it to its maximum potential across the entire video game. I find a lot of parallels between Ristar and the Kirby franchise. Both are simple characters with a single gimmick to their gameplay, but this one gimmick ends up having endless versatility during their entire game without ever becoming stale. Adding to this is just the sheer variety of environments that you'll encounter on each of the 6 worlds found in Ristar's solar system. Each planet introduces a different mechanic that often helps shuffle up the gameplay a bit. For instance, Planet Undertow features many underwater segments, which Ristar is able to traverse while swimming, while Planet Freon tosses slippery icy platforms at you for you to master. Perhaps the most unique is Planet Sonata, where the first half of the level has you tasked with returning lost metronomes to the elder songbirds that inhabit the planet. Upon delivering a metronome successfully, the songbird will then fly off while singing a new portion of the level's tune. It's really cool seeing what I guess you could say is a piece of diegetic music in a game like this, and it's quite neat hearing the melody unfold as you progress through the level. Speaking of which, let me just say that the presentation of this game is nothing short of, pardon the pun, stellar. Visually, this game is gorgeous and easily one of the best looking out of the entire Genesis library. Every world is striking to look at and vibrant with lush color and little graphical effects which add to the overall atmosphere of the game. Ristar definitely benefited by the more mature understanding of the hardware due to its somewhat late release in the lifespan of the Genesis. For those with an eye for them, you can easily find some excellent examples of line interrupts and dynamic palette swapping driving a lot of the effects in this game. Audio-wise, this game is just as good, and thematically, the soundtrack might be the most beautiful to have ever been made on the Genesis. There is so much to keep you listening, from the cheery upbeat jams on planets Flora and Sonata, the chilled laid-back vibes of Undertow and Freon, and the driving techno of Scorch and Automation. It takes a lot of skill to really get good sounding music out of the 2 audio chips that make up the idiosyncratic sound hardware in the Genesis, and Ristar absolutely shines through in this regard. I particularly love the final boss theme for Kaiser Greedy. Not only does the music sound oh so fittingly evil, but it does 2 things which I really love. First off, it has probably the fattest bass line I've ever heard out of that YM2612. Seriously, if you have some speakers with some excellent bass response, please do yourself a favor and go and listen to this track on them. You will not be disappointed. But also, halfway through the song, it features a dynamic tempo change. I rarely hear something like this happen in music from the 16-bit era, and the effect really contributes to the ramping up threat of the final boss battle. Further highlighting all of these little technical tricks is the boss battle with Awawek that concludes Planet Sonata's levels. Here, the brainwashed hawk will repeatedly crash a concert being performed by Sonata's bird inhabitants by taking over the stage and singing its own awful tune. During these segments, not only will the background begin to increasingly warp through horizontal scroll interrupts, but the boss music itself will also distort into this horrible off-key mess until you are able to knock Awawak off of his platform. This is all happening in real time on the Genesis hardware, and these little attention to detail bits hidden throughout the game's programming are just simply a delight to discover with each playthrough. Suffice to say, the entire development team behind Ristar were all tremendously skilled at getting the most out of the SEGA Genesis. Now, despite popular belief, Ristar wasn't technically produced directly by Sonic Team specifically. However, the game's staff does feature numerous alumni from the Sonic series. Most notable of these include game planner Akira Nishino, who was previously a designer on Sonic CD, character designer Yuji Uekawa, who would then become one of the lead character designers for the Sonic franchise, and composer Tomoko Sasaki, who would also end up working on the soundtrack for Nights into Dreams. But above all, I think the part about Ristar that shines the most for me is the titular character himself. Ristar is such a cheerful little guy. He's got all the upbeat attitude you'd expect from a 90s video game mascot, but without the edginess that quite a few others fall victim to. He's still a child and at times can find himself getting caught up in the moment, but all these little quirks end up adding to Ristar's endearment. The gameplay isn't as breakneck and action packed as some of the other titles on the Genesis, but that is perfectly okay. Exploration is openly encouraged by the game design, and the slower pace really helps you soak in everything that the game has to offer. Case in point, Ristar even has his own unique idle animations for each of the planets that he finds himself on. So, despite the seriousness of his mission, Ristar's earnest determination is something that I just find to be totally charming. That's it. I think if I were to use a single word to describe this game to others, it's quite simply just the word charming. Between the breathtakingly colorful visuals, catchy music, great attention to detail, inventive gameplay, and just the overall vibe of the game, I would have to say the sum of all these parts makes Ristar perhaps one of the most charming video games I have ever played, and certainly earns it the title of my all-time favorite game on the SEGA Genesis. And so, that concludes our look at Ristar today. There's certainly even more to this game that I didn't cover here, such as the few regional differences found in the game's different localizations, as well as the hidden bonus levels and specific strategies for navigating different sections of the game. I've been rambling on about this little guy for long enough now, so I'll leave you to discover those on your own after I wrap things up here. I also want to give a big shout out to my friends Keith and Elliot, who helped me with capturing some of this gameplay footage for you. I knew that simply recording a CRT like I normally do wouldn't be enough to really depict the beauty of this game for you, so being able to get a direct capture of this gameplay through their equipment really helped me out. Thank you guys. Now, if you haven't played Ristar before, I implore you to give this game a try, and hopefully the same charm that has won my heart over will also win yours as well. And as always, I thank you for joining me on another episode of Steve's Assorted Stuff, and perhaps in the future I'll talk about some of my other favorite games across the various other consoles in my collection. But until then, I want to wish Ristar a very happy 30th birthday today, and for the rest of you, have a great day, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.